Hey everyone, welcome to the Make It Better Summer Orientation. Thank you so much for tuning in. Just by participating today, you're taking the first step to becoming an activist in your community and making it better this fall. Today we'll introduce you to the Make It Better project, some facts about the bullying of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender youth, and explore the question of what exactly are gender and sexual orientation. Later workshops will go more in depth about the specific things you can do to make it better in your school. And listen to this, there will be prizes at the end of the summer for the most engaged campers to help you all start off the school year advocating for LGBTQ youth. So get excited!
Before we get started, I just want to give you an idea of how this will work. We're here for all of you, so don't be afraid to ask us any questions, because there are probably other questions that other youth are going to have. We want to answer them. To ask us a question or to answer one of ours, because we're going to ask you some, type it into the chat boxes, or you can tweet us with the hashtag MIBSummer. That's capital M, capital I, capital B, summer. Also, if we don't get to answer your questions during the broadcast, you can just bring it over to the Make It Better Summer Facebook page. There will be a whole team of LGBT and allied youth activists to answer your questions.
And you've probably been told that it gets better if you just wait. But that doesn't always work, and we can't always wait. Depending on your school, actually making it better might seem like an impossible task, but Max and I know that it is possible to make it better. And we know this because we've done it. And you can do it too.
We both just graduated high school this past spring. We're not talking to you as adults for whom bullying is a distant memory. We're talking to you as LGBT youth who struggle with this daily and have found ways to make it better. Our middle and high school experiences are proof that you can make it better, which is why we're going to start out by introducing ourselves and sharing our stories. So, back in my freshman year of high school, I used to make YouTube videos. A group of kids at my high school thought it would be funny to make a YouTube channel that was sort of like hating against me, calling me a faggot, and outing me to my whole school and the world. When this happened, I was pretty terrified, to tell you the truth. I couldn't turn to my family. I didn't want them to know that I was gay. I couldn't turn to my friends. What if they didn't understand? The whole summer before sophomore year, I was in a deep, dark funk. I didn't know where to turn. At Club Rush Week, at the beginning of the next school year, I saw the friendly, welcoming table bearing rainbow flags. I was at first scared to join this club. I didn't want people to think that I was gay just because I was a member. But just the fact that a group of people supported me at my high school gave me the strength to accept my own sexuality. And I knew that there would be a safe space for me to go if I ever felt threatened. Once I did finally start going to meetings, I fell in love with the social aspect of my school's gay-straight alliance. I felt at home. I felt comfortable. A summer internship after my junior year inspired me to start a wave of activism to help make my school better. I gave an announcement over the PA system as my first major act as co-president of my school's GSA. Through this speech, I opened the closet door for youth at my school and helped them feel comfortable with coming out as their true selves, whoever that may be. Soon after, I had my GSA and I led my GSA in the largest student-led campaign ever at my high school, which consisted of intense anti-bullying training for teachers and a poster awareness campaign for students. This campaign was not built overnight. It required months of preparation and planning, but the club worked together as a unified group with the school administration and faculty to achieve a common goal. In addition, we inspired 4 teachers to come out of the closet, helping make the climate at my school much safer for LGBTQ youth.
Thanks, Max. My story is a bit different, and just to repeat it again in case I didn't say it already, my name's Irene, and this is Max. So, I spent a long time questioning my sexuality, and, well, at least it felt that way. All through middle school and part of high school, I suffered over the questions of, what can I call myself, and am I brave enough to do that? I knew that my friends and family would accept me, but every day that I stayed in the closet was another day that I was ashamed that I hadn't come out. As soon as I got into high school, I joined the Gay Straight Alliance at my high school because I knew that no matter what, the people in the club would accept me and not push me past my comfort zone. But I also found that I loved having something positive to work for, and I saw that we could make small change at school and work from there. After sophomore year, all the other club members graduated and I was left to start almost from scratch. I became club president, even though I had never really led any group before. I had to trust my instinct and learn as I went. My biggest accomplishment at school was designing and presenting anti-homophobic and anti-transphobic workshops in classrooms with my GSA members. It was a little terrifying to take over classes for a block or two, but it was worth it to see how my classmates learned. In the workshops, we covered vocabulary words like LGBT and transgender, which are terms we'll go over later today, how to stop harassment in the hallways, students' rights, and how to be an effective straight ally to LGBT people. We ended up giving the workshop to more than 250 students in all, and from what I can see, my classmates are now much more aware about what they can do to stop homophobia and transphobia. Because I pushed myself and improved my self-confidence, I could then come out to my friends and family as bisexual or pansexual. I learned that in order to be an effective activist, sometimes I had to take risks and do things I was scared of, like talking to my principal, coming out, or leading a meeting. I still have to take all those risks. There will always be new challenges in our activist journeys, and we should be ready to tackle them. I've also learned that I don't ever have to label myself or anyone else. Knowing myself took a long time, and it wasn't something that could be rushed. If you're questioning or going through some soul searching too, don't worry. It'll probably sort itself out in some time. My advice to you all is summed up in an African proverb, which is one of my favorites. When there is no enemy within, the enemies outside cannot hurt you. So in case anyone wants to ask us questions about our experiences, we'll pause for a moment, and you can just type any questions into the chat. We'd also be happy to answer questions on the Make It Better Summer Facebook group in the session, or after the session.
So Nick P. asks, how was the general feeling after coming out to your peers?
Was that for me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't come out to everyone at the same time. You can't really do that because coming out is an ongoing process, and you'll always be coming out when you meet new people and all of that. But it felt really good. It felt liberating, and it felt like I didn't have to hide, because really I was just hiding from myself, but now I could just be free with everyone.
Yeah, I have to agree completely with Irene. When I came out, I felt like I was a new person. Like, if you knew me before I came out and saw me today, you couldn't believe how much I've changed. Like, the true you comes out, and you feel confident. Even like if a lot of people are putting you down, you still feel a lot more confident because you're sure of yourself. That's one thing that you always need to remember, is that you're sure of yourself. And once you're sure of yourself, no one can take you down.
I agree with everything Max said.
Mm-hmm. And we have one more question about your stories. How did your families react?
I'll go first. Yeah. Okay. Well, I already knew that my family would probably accept me. But like I said before, my struggle was mostly within myself, and my family took it really well. They said, we still love you and all of that. And I think the hardest thing was with my grandparents, because they've been just a little bit more conservative, but I've come out publicly, and I was featured in the newspaper a little while back, and so I came out there because I said that I was bisexual in the interview, and they saw it, and well, they haven't really reacted, but they said they were really proud of me for the article.
Yeah, my parents were very accepting when I came out. My dad has a lesbian sister, so that sort of eased that. My grandparents on my mother's side weren't very accepting, and they're still really leery. Like, they still love me, but they're not very comfortable with it. I've had a lot of friends who have had really tough experiences coming out to their parents, and if I could give anyone advice that's having a tough time coming out to their parents, find friends or find support groups. Find someone that is going to accept you, and just know that someone loves and accepts you out there. If your parents don't, hopefully they will come around to it. I know many times it just takes parents a while.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, my grandparents on my dad's side aren't nearly as accepting as my grandparents on my mom's side, and they're who I was talking about before. So on my dad's side, well, my dad is from Colombia, so it's a lot more of a conservative culture, and they're very religious. So I haven't come out to them, not really on purpose. Like, it's not like I'm trying to hide, but it's just like I think it's going to be a really bad idea, and I barely see them, so it's just like it'll take some time, and that's okay. Okay, so we'll move on now.
Okay, those are some really great questions that you've asked, and we'll hopefully touch on some of those topics later on throughout the summer. So now, before we get further into how to make it better, let's talk about what we're actually going to do to make it better. So you have the right to go to school without being bullied, but what exactly is LGBT bullying, and what do you have the right to stand up to? We're going to throw out a few scenarios, and we'd like you to tell us how you would respond in each situation, and whether you think it's fair or not. So just to reiterate, we're going to give you a scenario, and then we want you to respond on how you would respond in the situation. And do you think the scenario is fair? Like, are the people in the scenario being fair to one another?
Okay, so first scenario. Let's say a classmate calls you a sissy and threatens to beat you up if you talk to him. What would you do in that situation? Do you think that's fair or okay? Type your answers into the chat.
AJXG says it's not fair at all, so.
You're right, AJ. Yeah, it's not fair. It's harassment, and it's not something that you should have to put up with. You can go to a teacher or an administrator in this case and report your classmate who's calling you names.
So here's the next scenario. Your friends constantly say, "That's so gay," when talking to you about something that's really just idiotic. Would you react to that? Do you think that you'd have a right to react to that?
Okay, J1995 says, I hate that. And Sasha says, I already do react, that it's so annoying.
Those are good answers. It is annoying, and I don't like it either. Just one thing to keep in mind is that your friends probably don't mean to hurt you, and they just think that they're playing around, but that doesn't mean that it's okay. You can have a talk with them and explain when you say that's so gay, it offends people because a lot of people are gay. If you were really into Nike, for instance, you wouldn't want people to say, that's so Nike. So, you don't want people to walk around saying, that's so straight. So why should people say that's so gay? those are just some arguments that you can use.
Okay, next scenario. Let's say you identify as male and you want to be called he and him, but your teacher gets confused about the pronouns and keeps calling you she and her. Would you confront that teacher, and what would you think of their behavior?
Okay, we have one response here from AJ saying confront them, and actually several supporting ones saying that you have the right to tell them your PGP.
Yes. Okay, that's a really good answer. Lost my place. Where am I? Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, so in this case, the teacher is not harassing. Wait. Okay. You could confront them, but they're not doing it on purpose because the teacher is confused about the pronouns, and they really are trying. So you shouldn't get mad at them necessarily, but you should keep on correcting them and be patient.
There's a lot of support for that in the chat, so good job, everyone.
Okay, and here's another scenario. A male student isn't allowed to join the school dance team because it's only for girls. What are your thoughts on that?
Unfair. Resounding unfair.
Unfair?
Uber unfair.
Uber unfair.
The addition.
Ooh, okay. Well.
And actually, Shay had a situation with the volleyball team, and we had to go to the administration. But some sports are labeled by the state for just one gender, like boys soccer or girls soccer. You just have to talk to the administration.
That's true. Okay, but the truth is that you really should be able to participate in any sport you wish to. So while there may be like boys soccer and girls soccer, that's just to separate the different team leagues. Your gender shouldn't block you from doing what you love to do. So some of the things that you can do is first, try talking to the coach, and then after that you can take it to your principal or administration. If you need to, you can reach out to your local ACLU chapter. There will be a workshop about the ACLU later on this summer, but the ACLU is a legal group that can help out in situations like this one.
Okay, next scenario. Let's say your teacher nicknames your friend Nate Nancy and will only call him that, which makes the whole class laugh at Nate and makes Nate embarrassed. Is that okay? And what would you do?
We have someone who's contributing that this is sexual harassment and teachers should never act like that and you should talk to the administration.
Yeah, I agree. I don't exactly know if it would be labeled sexual harassment, but it's definitely some kind of harassment. So yes, you should report the teacher to an administrator, and if that doesn't work, again, you can take it to the ACLU, your local ACLU chapter. And it's important to remember in this case that even if it's your classmate being harassed, rather than you still have the right to speak up, and you should speak up. Okay, so you probably get the idea by now. Basically, if you feel like you're being targeted or treated differently because of your sexual orientation or the way you express your gender, you have the right to stand up to that. If you feel like you can't express yourself in school, you also have the right to stand up to that. Don't let anybody tell you that it's not serious or that it's not a real issue. According to GLSEN's 2009 National School Climate Survey, 9 out of 10 LGBT students report being harassed because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. So just because something happens a lot doesn't mean it's okay.
For the rest of the session, we're going to break down some of the terms and ideas that are really important when trying to make schools safe for LGBT people. First of all, let's get this one right out of the way. What does LGBT stand for? Anyone know? Just type your answers away into the chat.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. Nice. That for many people.
Yay! Yeah, that's right. So LGBT stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. Many of you might already know the basics about what it means to be lesbian, gay, or bisexual. Those terms refer to people who are attracted to the same gender or to both men and women. There's often a lot more confusion, though, around transgender people, and especially around transgender youth.
We had some questions about the Q, first of all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we get to those right now?
Yeah. Just acknowledging that there are also other letters that expand the definition as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of other letters that can be included in this acronym, and so sometimes it's called alphabet soup. So, yeah.
LGBTQIA, 2S, and P. I don't
Should
think
we
I
go
missed
through
anything.
all of those? Okay, so let's do the Q. Okay, so Q can either be for queer or questioning. Okay, I'll explain queer. Queer is a term that used to be and sometimes still is offensive. It's called a reclaimed term. So basically, we in the queer community, or LGBTQIA+, community sometimes use it, well, we use it positively a lot of the time. And yeah.
Yeah.
You want to add anything?
No, Q can also mean questioning. I, intersexual, 2S is two-spirit, P, pansexual, A, asexual. So anything that just really fits under the umbrella.
Okay.
So we'll start off with a question. What gender is this person?
We have some answers now from the about the image, what gender it was. We've got female, female, girl, and someone with a weird skirt. So.
Okay. So I don't know where my page went. Okay. Yeah. Any of the answers that you read could be right or wrong. I like the one about the weird skirt. Yeah. So everyone, not just LGBT people, has 3 parts to their gender identity, and we'll explain.
So the first part of your gender identity is the one most people think of when they think about gender: sex. The first thing that a doctor says after taking the first thing that a doctor said after he looked at me for the first time was, "It's a boy!" And that doctor's announcing the physical anatomy that I was born with. So the sex is the physical anatomy.
There's also gender identity. This is our inner sense of being a man, a woman, both, or neither. For example, my gender identity happens to be the same as my sex, female, but that's not the case for everyone. Some people's inner sense of gender does not match their physical sex.
The next one, gender expression. This is the way that we present our gender, the outward intentional and unintentional ways we share our gender to other people through things like our hair, clothes, makeup, the names we call ourselves. the things we do, like jobs, sports, or even the people that we hang out with. For instance, I'm not really into sports at all, but I love design and fashion. So, but I still identify as a guy.
Okay, pop quiz. Let's say that your physical anatomy at birth was male, but you've always felt that you were female. What part of your gender is defined as male? And what part, sex, gender identity, or gender expression, is female?
Okay, we have an answer that biological sex equals male and your gender identity is female.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So your sex would be male and your gender identity would be female. And gender expression doesn't even come into this scenario.
Okay, next scenario. Now let's say there's a girl, but she keeps her hair cut short. So what would you think, what would you call her or think that she was?
So we have several different answers. Female, gender nonconforming, lesbian, and lesbian, but it could be anything.
Okay, so a lot of people, like we just noticed, would be tempted to answer that a girl with short hair is probably a lesbian. But this is a matter of gender expression, not sexual orientation. She just expresses her gender differently from the typical female. That doesn't tell you anything about whether or not she's a lesbian. So you might be wondering, where is sexual orientation then? This is our identity based on our own gender and the gender or genders of those we're attracted to. This is where gay, lesbian, bisexual, straight, etc. apply. It's not your gender, though some lesbian, gay, and bisexual people might not fit into a typical gender.
Your first reaction to this breakdown of gender might be, oh, but there are only two types of gender, and you can only be one or the other, right? Well, that thinking is part of the gender binary system, which is a social system requiring everyone to be raised as either a boy or a girl, depending on the sex they're assigned at birth. As you can see by the three different kinds of gender identity, gender is a range. It's way more complicated than just being one or the other.
This might be new to you, so think for a moment. Have you ever seen the gender binary system? This idea that you're born and then must behave is either male or female. At work, in your life, at school, in your family, on TV. We'll wait a moment as you answer. Anderson Paperface. I can't do that long.
I don't even know who Anderson Cooper is.
We have J1995 contributes, son, act like a man. And AJ contributes, girls stay in the kitchen and cook sandwiches. And we also have Alex here adding that the school uniform, and Ray adding dress codes.
Yeah, those are all really great answers. Now, do you yourself fit into the boxes made by this gender binary system?
Well, we have some people who say that they do, some people who say they don't, and some people who say that they kind of do and kind of don't. So, and then we have an I do even though I identify as gay.
Okay. Yeah, that's completely normal. You can really identify as anything you want.
Yeah, so I'm going to give an example from my life. For example, I think I mostly fit into the gender binary system because my sex is female and I usually dress and act in a way that people perceive as female, and I feel like I'm female. However, there are a couple of ways that I don't fit in. I like being in charge of things, which some people would say that is a stereotypically male thing. I also like to take high-level math classes, and I almost never wear makeup.
So, I generally wear clothing that is meant for boys, so the stuff that you buy in the men's section of the store. But, so in that way I meet gender expectations, but I don't like sports. You will be caught blind seeing me like tossing a football back and forth. Like, that just doesn't happen. But you will see me in the studios, like designing outfits, or like, you know, like at the stores, like picking out like really cool like pieces of fashion, just because that's what I'm really into. And that's like not what the gender binary system would typically define as a guy, I guess, like whatever. Yeah, so think for a moment, like, how do people act towards someone whose gender expression and biological sex like don't match up? For example, how do people react to someone whose sex is male but who likes to wear dresses?
The people are mean, says Sasha, and Shay adds that they dislike and disapprove. And Angie's World adds that it's awful, that transphobia actually, you know, sometimes can be worse than homophobia.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for sharing, everyone. Okay, we're going to wrap up this session by going back to that word transgender, which is the T in LGBT, now that we've talked about how gender can mean different things. Some people might use these terms to describe themselves, but define them a bit differently than we're doing here. So just be careful. Okay, transgender is an umbrella term that can be used to describe people whose gender expression doesn't fit the mold or whose gender identity is different from their biological sex. Identities like transsexual and transvestite can also fall under the transgender umbrella. The word transsexual is usually used to mean someone who has completed or is planning to complete physical changes to live as a member of another sex. These physical changes can include surgery or adjusting the hormones in their body. On the other hand, cross-dressing or dressing as a member of another sex might have nothing to do with the gender identity of a person. It could be just for fun.
Any idea what transphobia might mean then?
We actually have a few questions here to go back to what exactly does transgender mean, which is, does trans basically cover everything?
Just the word trans or transgender?
Mm-hmm. Do all the trans words mean the same thing?
No.
No.
Okay, so trans... Well, actually, Irene's really good at explaining this, so I don't need to do that.
Sure. Okay, so transgender is more of the umbrella term. So if you think about an umbrella and then all the other words underneath them. Basically, transgender can refer to anyone whose gender expression doesn't fit the mold or whose gender identity is different from their biological sex. So transsexual is included in transgender. Cross-dressing can sometimes be included under the transgender umbrella, even though it's different. So just going over the other two again, transsexual is usually used to refer to someone who has completed or is planning to complete physical changes, which are changes to their body to live as a member of another sex. While if you're just saying transgender, they might not be planning those physical changes, or they might not have had those physical changes.
Okay. And we also have a question, is transsexual considered a derogatory term?
Can you repeat that?
Is transsexual considered a derogatory term?
It can be. I mean, there's no one answer because it's different for everybody. It's kind of like queer in that you don't know if it's going to be offensive for one particular person.
So to be safe, just you can use transgender, and it's an umbrella term that fits all of the other terms, generally speaking. So
yeah, I'd say if you're confused about how to refer to somebody or how to refer to a group of people, just ask them. Mm-hmm. That's the safest bet.
And we have one addition from Andy's World, which is that genderqueer means you might have to actually talk to me and ask me some questions.
Exactly. Yes.
Great.
So the answer to the question that I asked earlier, what is transphobia? Transphobia is the irrational fear of those who are perceived to break or blur the gender binary. That is, those who are perceived as not fitting a male or female stereotype. Transphobia can be experienced by straight people too, or by non-transgender, lesbian, gay, and bisexual people. By anyone who doesn't look like or act like the typical man or woman, who doesn't conform to that idea. That's what it means to be gender non-conforming.
Okay. Should we stop for questions or no? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. We'll move on. Next week's workshop will be specifically about what a GSA or Gay Straight Alliance Club is, how you can start one in your school, and specific activities your club or you and your friends can do to make it better.
We'll post questions from this chat later on the Facebook group, where you can show off your knowledge and maybe win a summer prize. We'll also put up resources related to each term or question that we've talked about. Now, we'd love to talk to you all for a bit, so feel free to ask questions in the chat.
Okay, well, next week talk about how to handle an unsupportive administration. J1995 asks.
We'll go into some detail about that. We're going to give some scenarios about different types of things you might run to in a GSA, and also we'll talk about how you can start a GSA. And there is a law that protects you from unsupportive administrations, and it's a federal law, so it will protect you in your state.
It's called the Federal Equal Access Act, if anyone wants to look that up, or we can give a quick explanation here if you want.
Or post one later on the Facebook group.
Okay, we'll do that.
So Ray asks, is transphobia the same as cisgenderism?
Not exactly. Max, do you want to take that one?
That one's complicated, but it's not, because cisgenderism has to do with the gender binary system and how cisgenderism is like sort of like the belief that there are only two different genders, whereas transphobia is just a fear of people who don't conform to the actual gender binary system. So that's sort of how it is.
Yeah, I think an easy and simplified way to think about it is like cisgenderism is when people are given privileges systematically, where it's not harassment. Like people who are born in one sex and identify in that sex and are not transgender, they are given more privileges.
Essentially, they just have an easier time going through society.
Mm-hmm. And it's because society assumes that transgender people don't really exist. So
right, like you never see, unless you're watching the Logo channel, you never see transgender people like in commercials. Like there's always like a man and a woman and a boy and a girl like happily dancing through a field. And that's not reality, but it's what society wants you to believe, and it makes it easier if you follow that reality.
Yeah. So, and then an example of transphobia could be like a transgender person getting bashed on the street or something like that.
Right.
Okay, we have another question. Is what do you do do you have any advice for someone in a situation where their parents are not very accepting? But, do they come out? How do they come out if they do? And if you're afraid to come out to your parents?
Well, if you, there are a lot of different things to consider when coming out to your parents. The big one is whether or not my parents will accept me, and then falling under that are the consequences of them not accepting you. Are they going to kick you out of the house? Are they not going to love you anymore? Or maybe they do accept you, then everything's great. I had a friend that was kicked out of his house by his parents when he came out to them. But it took them a few months. He spent those 3 months living with a friend, and a few months later his parents were like, "We accept you." They don't believe that he's gay, but they accept that he thinks he's gay. It's weird, but it becomes really complicated, and it's just something that you need to really think about. If you think that it's seriously a problem coming out to your parents and you're really worried about it, come out to your friends, come out to whoever you can, just so you build that self-confidence. Remember what I was saying earlier, you need that self-confidence, and then no one can get at you. Then you can do that, and you don't necessarily need to come out to your parents if you're really that worried about it. I would highly recommend coming out to your parents. It makes life so much better, especially if they're accepting. And if you're going off to college soon, you won't necessarily need to worry about that. College is a time when so many people come out of the closet.
Yeah, I would say that the biggest thing to keep in mind is that, like, if you come out to your parents, will you be safe? And
right.
Will you still have a place to live? And then if you're not sure about that, or I'd say even if you do know whether or not you're going to be safe, find a support group and find other people you can talk to so that you can get that outlet and find a community. Great. Any other questions?
Do you all encourage coming out at school?
Yes.
Yeah, I would come out at school. I got bullied more when I was in the closet, and then when I came out, people stopped bullying me. It's that confidence thing again. And there might be say you go to a very conservative school, schools are large places. Even if you go to a small private school, there's still going to be people there that are going to accept you. Find that niche, find that group of people that you know will accept you, and then come out. That way you know that you have your supportive base, and whether or not the rest of the people at your school accept you isn't a problem. And then hopefully you can work to make it better at your school. Because once you're confident, you will have the strength and the abilities to help make your school better. So that way it will be accepting.
And if you're worried that if you come out at school you'll be harassed, we're going to have a workshop where the ACLU will come in and give more information about what rights you have in your state.
Yeah.
And that'll be later on in a few weeks.
Okay, one more question. How active are you two in the LGBT youth movement?
Well, very active.
Well, I've been in activism for about a year and a half now, working with different LGBT groups. I've done a lot of marriage equality work, and my biggest focus for the past year now has been working with Gay Straight Alliance Network to help make it better in schools here in the San Francisco Bay Area where we're located, and throughout California. I hope to continue working in the LGBT youth movement when I go off to college this fall, and spread my wings even further. So I would consider myself very, very active.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I joined the Gay Straight Alliance at my school, well, right when I joined high school in my freshman year, and I've stayed in it ever since. I've been president for 2 years. We've completed a couple of projects that we'll talk about in the next session. I served on, I've done work in my school district at a local LGBT community center, and I've also been working with Max here at GSA Network.
Okay, final question is, how do you handle it, or what do you recommend if your school is full of really religious people who you think might not accept you?
Well, that one's a toughie, because a lot of people have this belief that the Bible says a lot of things that are against gay people, and that's actually not very true. If you take a Bible history class or whatnot, they're actually slandering the Romans, because when they wrote the Bible, the Romans were invading the people that wrote the Bible, and Romans were really interested in, Romans practiced gay sex a lot. It was very common, and so the stuff against that in the Bible is really against the Romans. And I don't know, I don't really think that if you said this to a very religious person that they would believe you. So that's probably not the best way to combat it. But
well, we have a good comment here from Shay, which is that everyone interprets the Bible differently.
Right.
That's true. Yeah. I haven't really had this problem, but I think that what you have in common with a lot of these religious students is that, well, I think that you should say to them, love thy neighbor, and, do unto others as they would do unto you. You just make them think about what's actually right to do. They would want to be accepted for who they are, and you also deserve to be accepted for who you are.
Irene makes a really good point. So use their messages that they preach, like helping others, accepting others, and say, hey, wait now, I'm a person too with the same rights as you.
One thing that I'd like to add to this is that just because you're, just because you're Christian doesn't mean you're other. Yeah,
Yes.
there are plenty of LGBT folks who are Christian and who
Right.
are religious, and the two aren't contradictory.
Right.
And so, very final question. This time for real is how do you handle if people rip down posters in your school for your GSA?
Yeah, we were going to mention this in the next session, but I'll just answer it here. So, yeah, we've had this problem too in my school, and it happens a lot. So what we do, we put up a poster, but under it we put a little post-it or a note card saying, don't hate or don't rip this poster down. It was meant to stop hate like this. Just some short little message. Yeah, or you can put repeat posters underneath, and maybe you can also register or tell the administration or the leadership advisor or whatever that you put a poster up, and that make sure that they know you put a poster up in that space, and then show them that it was ripped down, and maybe they can do something about it.
Also, if you get teachers to put posters up in classrooms, they're a lot less likely to get ripped down, and put them by the clock, because everyone's always looking at the clock in the room to see when they can get out. They'll see your poster, they won't be able to rip it down. It's very effective.
Yeah. Also, if you put posters up really high, like if you stand on a chair and then tape it up, then people can't really rip it down as they're walking by. Okay.
So thank you for tuning in today, and we will see you next Thursday at the same time, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 Eastern.
Thank you. Want to do the cheer?
Let's make it better!